You're listening to Bold Hearts, Big Moves, the show for female entrepreneurs who want it all. A thriving business, deep self-love, and fulfilling relationships. I'm Erin Anderson, and each week we will dive into how to set stronger boundaries, make empowered choices, and show up in life and business with boldness, authenticity, and heart. Because let's be real, the money you make is directly related to the love that you have for yourself and the strength of your relationships. So if you're ready to lead with love and make those big moves with those bold hearts, let's dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Bold Hearts, Big Moves. This week we have with us back the fabulous Kirsten Carey. And I've got a lot of podcast guests that come on and they have like all these really cool names and stuff. And so I really hope I get them right every single time I say that. But because how sad would it be? I know Kirsten's been on this show before and I get her name wrong. That would just be totally, totally embarrassing, right?
You got it. You got it right. You got it right.
Good. I'm glad. I thought so. I'm pretty good with phonetics. But anyway, today we're talking about ditching the script. And talking about like what are the 3 secrets to closing more sales calls and then just letting things kind of flow authentically. Mm-hmm. And I love this topic because I think a lot of people are just scared of sales, right? One of the things we talk about a lot with my clients personally is like that fear of being salesy, that fear of mm-hmm. asking for the sell, the fear of asking for the money or over giving. And I think it's all centered around this one thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And I've been through sales courses, right? And I've done the stuff. And they're very bro-y. They're very bro, shove it down their throat, be all masculine. And it's not that, male or female is not what we're talking about. It's that like push energy, that kind of convince energy, that force, that trickery, that if you get them to say yes 15 times, you ask 15 special questions and you get the yes, then you ask for the sale and you get the 16th and there's some magic answer. And legit, this is like stuff that is being taught in a lot of sales programs.
It's true.
And here's the thing, like if you connect with the person and you get to what's truly driving their decision-making, and a lot of times they don't even know it themselves, mm-hmm. you can flow yourself right through into not only a yes, but a phenomenal ideal client. And a lot of the bro-y, and I joke about this, but that kind of energy that we're talking about, that bro-y kind of energy, it unfortunately what it does is it messes up the trust factor. Yeah. And even if you do have that client come back, a lot of times there's a higher percentage of people who have cancellations or buyer's remorse last minute, or they don't trust you through the process of whatever program you're selling them. Mm-hmm. So they don't get the results the way that they could. They don't give you the referrals the way that they could. You don't feel good about the relationship. Mm-hmm. So you really have to get grounded in who you are and allow that flow to happen and be perfectly okay if it's a no.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So true. And that was one of the biggest things about sales that I learned, because yes, I have a very unique perspective, a unique product, a unique et cetera, et cetera. And when people go through my program, they're mind blown at how mm-hmm. easy they can set boundaries and how easy those boundaries like transmute into manifestation and results and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mind blown, right?
Yeah.
So do I know I can deliver results? You betcha. But I remember being so scared of the sales call until, my coach, Kushla Chadwick, one of the things that she told me was go for the relationship.
Yeah.
Establish the relationship. Stop worrying about the yes or the no. Just help them make a decision.
Yes.
Right? It's not about you getting the sale. Like, that's great. That's fine. That's a wonderful result. Let's celebrate that. But you're there to help the client through all aspects of it, whether it be, the initial call to the enrollment call, to the sales call, to whatever it is. Your job is to be there to show up and help that client just make decisions.
Yes. And help them find clarity and help them get there. And a lot of the other programs are based on stats only. And I love me a good spreadsheet. I love me a good percentage. Like, I'm like, they're important to the process. But if you're only going for that, and that's what your focused outcome is, that we're getting one more percentage point higher in our closing rate, which I'm, again, big fan on 50% closing rate or higher. What happens is your focus goes on to the wrong thing. And then all of your attention and all that energy and all that vibration goes to the wrong space. And the customer or the potential customer can feel it. So if you're not focused on them, essentially here, I'll boil it all down. Every single person, no matter who you are, no matter what age you are, no matter what you're doing, what we truly want at our core level is to feel seen, heard, and understood.
Yes, agree.
And if we think the other person is focused on something else other than seeing us, hearing us, and understanding us, they get cranky. They get upset. They feel mistrust. And mistrust is already attached to the sales process because of so many not great salespeople in their flow or what their focus is. So we really want them to feel that. And when you can start a conversation with, hey, my goal here today isn't to convince you to go a yes or no. My job is to help you find clarity around, is this the right thing for you right now for both of us? Yes. And are you okay with me helping you get there? And they're like, whoa, like it's a different vibe, right?
Yes.
And telling them, look, I'm not attached to your yes or no, and being actually authentic about that. Because some people will say that, but they'll feel the disconnect if you're like, but I need to make my numbers this month, or I need to make my percentage. And people just relax. When you say that with all the authenticity and you feel it yourself, you can see them visibly exhale.
Yes.
They're like, oh, thank God, you were in it together. Like, because it's not helping you if you get somebody to a yes who wasn't supposed to be there.
Yes. Okay. That is true. And I can tell you something. I can think of most of the clients I've had in my business, I've been coaching now for 12, 13 years ish, right? They've all been amazing clients, but I can think of two, right? I can think of two that stiffed me. And if I think back to that process, it was that very thing, right? Where I was really wanting that yes, and I was sitting there saying like, hey, I'm here to show up for you. Like I was in that energy, but really back behind me, I was thinking about all the bills I had to pay and all of the numbers I had to hit this month and all. That's what I was really focused on. Yes. And if I would have focused on the client, right, I would have actually seen that they weren't a good fit.
Right.
Like this is personal attesting from me. And so now, like I said, like not only do we tend to draw in the perfect client when we are not attached to that yes or no. Yeah, totally. Celebrate the yes, but celebrate the no.
Yes. Too. And I will help people celebrate that. If we get to a clear no, and they're not just in that fear space, but it's a clear no on both sides. I'm like, let's celebrate that we got to a clear no, right? And there's this like wonderment that comes through them that they're like, wow, okay, you were really here for me. And if they are going to come back or are going to be able to show up as the right ideal client at some point in the future, they will come back. But if you're doing the broy, shove it down their throat, try to convince, not only will they not come back, they would never refer. I've actually had people who we decided it was a clear fit. We were both celebrating that it was not a clear fit. And they've recommended to me people who were a clear fit.
That's awesome.
I even got referrals out of people. Right. So you have to see beyond that moment, like what's behind this, what other relationship pieces could come flow to me correctly through this person, because they're not the right one, but they may know the right one.
Yes.
So it's bigger than that. It's bigger than the sales call. There's always so many more pieces to it. And if we don't understand that, and we're just trying to get that closed for right now, the bigger business won't come through.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Because it's all about it's not about numbers. It's about respect. Right. And I think that's one of the reasons, yes, the bro-y thing can totally work for, I think, that masculine energy and wanting to close in a masculine way. Right. I think about Grant Cardone. as a really good
He's like the
example
broiest of the bros.
Broiest of the bro, like so much so.
Yep.
And it works for him.
Yeah.
It totally works for
Respect.
him.
I mean, a lot of people's core programs have come because Grant Cardone is who he is.
Yes.
But I think so many people have come out of that broiness that people are not authentically flowing into it. They're just seeing it as, oh, this is the process I have to do. And if I just follow steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I do it in order, and I do exactly the way they say it, it's going to work for me. But if you don't resonate with that and it doesn't feel good for you, and you feel like you're pushing and you feel out of sync with yourself, no matter who told you to do what, it's not going to work for you.
Yes, exactly. So here's the question then for you. Okay. So I think, like, I totally agree with that. Like, if it's not jiving, if it's not connecting, there's a reason, right? But I think we also have to be somewhat careful here, because I know, like, sometimes when, especially when we're new to business, or when we are new to coaching, or the sales call, right? I've seen women especially get in and overgive.
Yes.
Right? Because the sales call in general is uncomfortable for them, right?
Yep.
They have all this mentality and all these beliefs around money and asking for that sell, et cetera, right? So they tend to overgive to try to prove their worth, et cetera, et cetera. And they might take, like, when we say, like, if it's not feeling good, you know, you need to pay attention to that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your sales process is wrong either. You know what I mean? And I think we need to address that piece of this as well, because that's something I see a lot.
100%. And many things go wrong at this point. So I'm really glad you brought this up. The first thing is, as you pointed out, we overgive. And women tend to do this more than men, but men will still do this too.
Yeah.
We overgive because we're trying to prove our worth. It becomes transactional. And a lot of us in our childhoods learned that to be loved and to be heard and to be understood, we had to overgive, and we had to transactionally do something in order to receive that love, or receive that attention, or receive that need that we inherently had as a child.
Yes.
So we learn this over time, right? So now we go into these relationships, whether it's a sales relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship, it doesn't really matter. It's a relationship. We feel like we have to give something in order for that to come back to us, which is not correct from an adult standpoint. From a child standpoint, it makes sense. But we are conditioned to believe that. So it becomes transactional. It's not. So if you go into the process where you're there, you're not overgiving, you're there just to understand and reflect back to that potential customer what their needs are. And then you think, okay, can I provide that need for them? Is that what I do? And not go also out of bounds where you're trying to overgive from, I don't do that thing, but you need that thing and I can help you with that thing. We don't want to go there either. We stay in our lane.
Yes.
We recognize that all our job is to understand at that moment. And then to mirror it back to, do we do this and this is what we do or not? Or can I refer you to someone else?
Yes.
But also in that point, we tend to coach where we don't need to be coaching. We tend to consult where we shouldn't be consulting. We tend to give them information that unfortunately a lot of times leads the potential customer to believe that they can do it on their own, which if they could have done it on their own, they would have done it by now. And we can't fix it for them in a 45-minute sales call, but we give them the illusion. We give that potential customer an illusion that they could. So then they're thrilled with the conversation and they don't buy. And we're like, why? I was great. I gave them all this help. I did all this stuff. They don't like me. I mean, that's the little kid in us. And then they don't buy. Well, now we've actually inappropriately set the client up or potential client up to think that they can do it on their own. And they leave. And then they fail. And then they feel worse. And then they connect that failure to us, even though they didn't come back to us as a customer. So we have to learn how to, back to you, hold the boundary on what's a client that we're giving information to, what's a potential client that we need to help them find the solution through us without giving them all the solutions or even a partial solution. So they go away and actually can't complete the solution, if that made sense.
Yes, it absolutely totally does make sense. Because here's the thing, like, and I love what you're saying too about like how it's connecting back to childhood, right? We tend, and I was actually having this conversation with my husband yesterday, that we tend to do one of two things, right? Like attention and acknowledgement and acceptance, those are all basic human needs. And
Yes.
if we feel like that's a transactional activity, right, there's usually been some type of a childhood trauma in there, whether it be like abuse or severe neglect, right? Both of those kind of tend to have us believe these things, right? And I'm not necessarily saying like if you're listening to this that that's been your story, but probably somewhere down deep inside, whether it's with a parent or a teacher or some type of adult figure, you did learn that this is
Yeah.
transactional. And this is coming back to you right now in sales because you also understand that sales are transactional,
Yeah.
that business is all about relationships. It's 100% about relationships. All money comes to us through some type of relationship transaction, right? And so if you had this idea that you have to prove your worth from childhood, this is why this is coming up. And I want to make that really clear, right?
Yep.
But the thing that you have to understand about becoming a really, really great coach or really great business owner is it requires growth. To get more money, it requires growth, right? To get your money to grow, that is a personal, mental, emotional, spiritual growth concept, right?
Yes.
So this is what we're talking about here. And this is why this is so important when it comes back down to sales. Because the other thing we're saying here is to be good at sales is also to be confident that you can deliver what the client is saying they need.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think a lot of us are worried that we can't perform. I mean, I had a business for 15 years that was in health, and a lot of it was on people with chronic illness and autoimmune conditions. And there were moments where I had people who were literally on calls with me who were barely functioning, and I joke, but this is literally what was happening. A lot of times they were just trying not to die today because things had gotten, they'd spun so badly, right? So you're having a conversation with somebody who's like, my goal, they're not like, I want to make $5,000 more. I want to make 50,000 by the end of the year. Like I'm trying to make it to the end of the week. And you're like, what? So there were moments where that was really heavy. And when we start taking on that as our personal responsibility, which it's not, it's to help them find a process to do the best they can do for whatever you're selling, unless you're giving some sort of crazy guarantee. There is some also part where you start to take that on as yours, which also is a very female related thing where we receive that as our own stuff, which is also something we learn in childhood, that it's our stuff to take on. So if we start looking at it from that perspective too, we have to start really looking at the process and the promises that we're making and the things that we say can happen in the programs or the high ticket, courses that we're selling, and really get clear with ourselves too. What are we promising? What is this end goal in mind? Where are we going with this? Is it measurable, or is it just you'll be healed? And I'm like, you can't say things like that. You have to be very specific and understand what the end goal is. But for the sales call, it is truly to understand what they want, they need, and can you do feel comfortable delivering that as a result.
I agree.
And if you don't, then it's not the good thing for either one of you. But we overgive, we over receive, because we want it so badly. And then that's the other thing I see with a lot of salespeople too, or owners who are coaches who are in the sales process, right? They don't identify as a salesperson. They're like, I'm the owner or I'm the coach. And they flow in that really well, but they get scared somehow in this, is that they don't see the end as a salesperson, that you were wearing a different hat right now. Your goal is just to find out, is this the right process? And if it's not, then move them on. But we want it so badly for them. What ends up happening is that we try to pull them over the line, drag them over on our back, and help them over the line when they're not ready to go. But we want it so badly for them. We want the result, and we've seen the result, and we know the other side of the rainbow results. It feels great, but you can't want it more than they do. And I've literally said that to people on calls. I'm like, look, I know you can get the result you're looking for. I've seen the result you're looking for with people exactly in the position you're in. And I can introduce you to some of those people. You can watch the testimonies, you can do all the things. However, I feel right now, I want this more than you do. And I can't get you there on my own. And sometimes they're like, you're right. I don't believe I can get there. I'm like, okay. And then it's nothing to do with your program. That is not where you start convincing them. That's where you have to dig a little bit deeper on what's the block.
What is the block? Exactly. Exactly. And are they willing to move past it themselves, right?
And do the work.
And do the work. And do the work. Yeah. And that's the thing too. Like that is so key. Like you've got to really hone in on that piece.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'll tell you. So I had another podcast. It's called The Other Side of the Struggle, Healing from Betrayal Trauma, right? It's a fantastic podcast, all about healing trauma, right? Whether it be mental, emotional, physical, whether it be developmental, generational, societal, like there's different types of trauma, right? But and that podcast, as of right now, has over 13,000 downloads, right? It was doing really well, still gaining traction. Okay. But the reason why I wrapped that podcast up, I dropped the name Betrayal Trauma Coach, and I went into business and boundaries coaching, okay, was because of this very thing. That I realized something when it came to the people that were coming to me through that podcast. And it was that they were people that were not ready to take the action that needed to be taken. I had the sweetest gal come to me from that podcast, but she was actually the kicker. When I realized that, like, okay, she came to me and she was like, I need to know how to be a better partner. And I'm like, well, I can definitely help with that, but let me get some context. Like what do you mean by better partner, right? And we want to get really clear. Her boyfriend had grabbed her by the back of the head, by her hair that morning, ripped her out of the shower, butt naked, and told her, "Woman, make my breakfast." And she
Sounds
was
like a lovely
blaming,
guy.
right? And she was blaming herself for it, saying it was my fault. I didn't get up in time. I didn't have his breakfast ready before I got in the shower. I thought I would be okay. And she was sitting here like blaming herself. That's not my client, right? And I had a very, very stark reality at that point. I'm not going to sit there and offer that sweet woman help when what she needs is therapy, right? Because she needs to see like her trauma. She needs to unravel it. She needs to unpack it to some degree before she comes to me, right? She needs to have the understanding, and I'm not the person for that. When I realized that these women that were coming to me from that podcast were all in a very similar mentality, I was like, oh, the message is that somewhere down deep inside of themselves, they're still either like in this victim mentality or like something's wrong with them.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so if it's helpful, I kept it up. Like it's still there. The 130 episodes, like it's helping people. That is for sure. But it's not what I wanted to do. And I think that it's also good to say that if you're noticing that people are coming to you that aren't jiving with your program, aren't jiving with what you say you can do, right? You've also got to take a look at your messaging.
Right. And that's where I think that's where we end up at a lot of the time with my clients is that they're saying, these leads are bad. I'm like, no, you're attracting exactly what you're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
Why it's not good is because you're also attracting a person who's not action oriented and is not ready to take action. And you're trying to convince them and you think you're doing something wrong in the sales process where really it originated in your messaging in the beginning of the marketing process.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you don't know that until you have the conversations with the people who are starting to flow to you.
Mm-hmm.
So the understanding is now we've taken this information in these sales calls and we've actually, it's kind of like you've been doing research because you now understand what they're answering. You can take that information if you're doing the sales calls and you're understanding and you're recording them and you get what you're really doing there. It was actually research the whole time. You thought it was a sales call. It wasn't. And then you can backtrack and start getting clearer about where am I getting the no, or why is it a no? What answers am I getting to things? Who is this attracting? Now we have to spin it back to the beginning of the process and tweak something there. And I've done that with my own companies. I've done that with other people's companies where sometimes actually one of our clients, one of the people I'm working with right now, she does a 3-day process where it's like a 3-day event. And at the 3-day event, they pitch the offer and it's like a $20,000 offer. But what she started finding is she was doing one particular 3-day topic, and then she does a second 3-day topic, and she was weaving them through the year. One of the topics was bringing in far more people. Like 3 times the number of people were showing up, 3 times the number of people registering. They were getting all this interaction. It was a great 3-day event, but they were only getting like 10% sales out of all of the people.
Wow.
So yeah, then she was doing another event, totally different topic, same process though. 3-day event, everyone shows up. She pitches the event on the second day. We send it to the sales team, all the things. 1/3 of the people were showing up. 1/3 of the people from the other event. So much smaller audience, much fewer people. So right away, the whole sales team's like, oh, this is going to suck. I'm going to have fewer leads. Everybody's like, wah, wah. So the conversation before the sales team even got the lead or even got the opportunity to have a conversation with people was the topic must be bad. The other topic brings in more people. It's much better. We should go back to the old topic. So even before the 3-day event was over and the sales team even got to have the conversations, they were already making plans to shift back to the topic from before. Well, when it came down to it, they had a 19% conversion rate from the people who showed up. They had far more people show up for the sales calls, and they actually made more money.
Right.
So when we started looking at it, I was like, okay, so look at the 2 topics that you're using. The first topic is bringing a lot more tire kickers, people who are earlier in their business, people who didn't have any money to actually put towards their business because they've never actually had a client before, all of these things. And then the second group was bringing in much more higher level people who are already making money with their business, but didn't have the next level up. They were bringing in much more solid people who were action oriented, people who were ready to take action and do the next level. And so when we started looking at who it was attracting, I was like, and we did far less work on the second one because there were fewer people to manage. There was fewer people in the Facebook group during the event. There was, but the interaction was actually higher if we really looked at it. So when we looked at it, it was like, let's not make these instant assumptions because there's far more people here. I'm like, How did we close? How much money did you make? How much work did we do? How much expenditure was there? Like, let's look at the overall. And it was like, whoa. So you can't make assumptions either. You have to look, and this is where I love the stats. The stats don't lie. And who your target is. Totally changed the game.
Yes. So true. And I was actually thinking that as you're saying that, don't just assume that because it's a ginormous audience that you've got action takers. And when, if you have a small Facebook group of just like 20, 30, 40 people, and you sit there and think, oh, I've got to get way more people in here. Like you look at all these groups and they have thousands and thousands of people. Yeah, you're getting more eyes on your stuff. That is true. Okay. But in that 20 and 30 people, you have an opportunity to really connect.
Yes.
Really connect. So don't just sneeze on lower numbers. Maybe those numbers really are the dedicated people, right? The ones
that's what the big change that we're seeing now. Even 6 months ago, but in the past 2 years, but I'd say even the last 6 months, it's gone dramatically different. Is the social media numbers, the influencers. I know a lot of influencers who have millions of followers who are making no money off of, and they can't convert into sales from all of the stuff that they're doing. And I know people who have a couple hundred people who are following them, who are dedicated, who are the right target, who are action and ready to take action people they're making money. So, we have to start recognizing, especially since COVID, especially since people are desperate at this point for true, authentic interaction and relationships.
Yes.
Which we lost that.
Yes.
So correct, back to you, like, don't sneeze on that lower audience. They are often amazing if you are doing true, authentic connection, which is truly how sales really looks.
Yes. 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 And that's where we start with the trust, right? Because, and I've said this, I actually have a whole podcast episode about this. If trust is low, there is no dough.
Nope.
Right?
Not, people aren't, or they're making the decision and then they're getting their money back, or they're canceling, or they're freaking out because they got stuck in some sort of rowy, again, masculine push energy where you're doing a fast action discount, close them on one sale, get the cancel, like do and it's like, even when people come through that funnel that way, there's a lot of disconnect.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. There's a ton of disconnect. And the thing is for a woman, especially, we're connectors. Right? Major connectors. I love thinking about like Eve actually in this situation, right? You can see that, like in the Bible, you can see her being that connector and connecting the dots and connecting the understanding and connecting to people and connecting to the energy. Like that's what she did. And that's part of the reason why you're here today. Right?
Exactly.
Because she figured that out. She connected.
Right.
Because she connected, right? And when we're connecting to other people, that is such a feminine thing to do. And that's authentic, right? And when we're coming and selling from that space, that authenticity, well, then there's also a lot of concern for the client. There's also a lot of love for that client and wanting to help the client in the way that they need help, right? And sometimes, and I love this, sometimes helping that client is allowing them to say no, allowing yourself to say this isn't the right time.
Right.
Right.
But it's also asking the questions that a lot of times we think are rude or not nice. And they feel icky sometimes, because your job, if you have a solution for their problem and their problem is hurting them, which it is hurting them at some level, financially, mentally, emotionally, health-wise, whatever. They're being hurt by something enough that they're on your call and they're on this conversation with you, trying to solve a problem. They're being injured in some way. If you get to a point where you don't ask the hard question, like if they're like, well, I don't know if I can do this right now, and you go, okay, bye. You didn't ask the hard question of, wait a minute, you're on a call with me. I'm curious, what's stopping you from moving forward? You said that you wanted this, and we already established that you feel the program could help you with this. You said you wanted this, the program can help you with, but we're leaving this call and we're not moving forward. And I know with certainty that this is the solution, and you know with certainty, why are we not moving forward? If we don't ask those questions, and because we think, oh, it's too salesy. It's salesy if you're only asking because you're just trying to get their credit card. But if you're asking because you're like, wait a minute, there's a disconnect. You told me this. You said you knew my program would solve this. You see the bridge. Why are we not stepping onto the bridge? I'm just curious. If we don't ask that question, we're not actually there to help them.
Exactly. Yes.
And so that's our job. And that's where like how a lot of us were brought up, especially women, it was, you were supposed to be nice and you don't want to upset someone and you don't want to be unkind. I'm like, none of that is unkind when you're coming at it for the right reasons.
Or disrespectful.
Exactly.
Right? And so, okay, I got to point this out. Like, we're talking about boundaries here, because if you really truly do understand boundaries are all about how you choose to show up, how you choose to show up because of your self-belief.
Yes.
Right? And a sales call is 100% that. So if we were to put this into a boundary, what do you think the boundary is, right? To get to this place in a sales call?
You know, the boundary is being willing to step beyond what we think is kind or nice. But also stay true to who we really are at the same time, because we use excuses. I mean, a lot of the times it's the salesperson's hangups that doesn't help the other person get to where they need to go. So we have a hangup about money. We have a hangup. So the boundary is to me, boundaries are holding things out that don't serve us, but also keeping things in that do.
Yes.
And if we truly are saying to that person, we are there for you, we were here to hear you, understand you, see you, but we are then not asking the question that helps us understand them at a deeper level, we are not actually holding the boundary that we said we'd hold, which is being true and authentic and curious.
Yes. And see, and I think this is the boundary, like, you just said that, like, I'm here to understand. I'm an understanding person. I'm a curious person, but also I am a great coach.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like all three of those things are true in this statement, right? Because I'll tell you something. One of the things about my ideal client that is very true is they can handle having their butt kicked.
Right.
Right. And why? Because I can handle having my butt kicked.
Yeah.
Right. And because I've had kick butt coaches that aren't willing to let me stop because something is painful or because something is uncomfortable. Like, no, they're like, no, we're going to look at this. Right. We're actually going to make you sit in this for just a minute.
Yes.
Right. Because of that, I've been able to transmute and make my business into 6+ figures, right? I've been able to clarify who I am, what kind of a coach I am, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you feel like you have to be nice and you have to walk on eggshells around someone, that's not your ideal client.
No. And you're also giving them a false sense of who you are in that conversation. Because if you are the type of person that if they were already your client, you would be willing to push back on them, but you won't push back on them in the sales call, you are showing up inauthentically to who you are as a coach, and you're giving them a false sense of who you are as them being your client. So I will let people know in the call, like, we're trying to get you to a clear yes or no. We talked about that. Once we get in there, I will say that if they're showing up incongruent and they're saying they want this, but then they won't move forward after they say that the process is the right one for them, I'm like, okay, do I have your permission to push back here? Do you mind if I give you a mirror and help you see something that I see on this side? And you've asked permission. They're now going to go, yes. I've never had anybody say no. Never. But if they did, you're like, oh, then I super have information about you. If they were like, no, I'm not willing for you to push back, I'm like, I would be like, okay, then thank you for showing up as yourself. But if they always, so far, I've never had one, but someday they say yes. I'm like, okay, I'm seeing a mirror that you've said this, but now you're also saying this, and they are not matching. Help me understand.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, okay. Like, what else is going on? What else are you feeling right now that we haven't addressed? Because I want to make sure that we do, because my goal is that you get the answer you're looking for, whether it's through me or not. But I'm getting this message. Can we talk about it? And they're like, yes, because this is what we do, right? This is the conversation. And if they're not comfortable in that space, I let them sit in it. I had a woman one time who I got her to that point, and I said, look, and she's like, okay, well, let's talk about the how payments and things. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Before we even talk about the money, I want to make sure you're clear so that I'm clear that this is the right process for you. So we went through a whole process. I take them through. Okay, so I'll give you one of the things that I love to do, and I coach on this, and people freaking love it. So are you familiar? Do you watch Marvel comics, or do you watch any of the
I have 4
superhero
boys.
movies? Okay.
Yep.
So have you seen Doctor Strange? Is my very favorite of all of them. He's the one that walks through portals, and he has the multiverse. And okay, he's my favorite guy ever. So I do something I call the Doctor Strange close. It's when you have somebody who's still kind of not fully stepped in, but they're trying to convince themselves, but they're not. And then they're saying things like, well, I don't know if I have the money. Like, they're in this space, but I'm like, I need a clear yes from your soul that you are sure that this process is the right one for you. And what we're talking about, whether it's money, time, none of that matters right now. I need to make sure we're on the same page. So I had a potential client who became a client. So she got to that point, and then she started asking all the logic questions. Well, the timing of things and the numbers and I'm like, oh, she's not in her this space. This is where we make decisions from, right? Our hearts, our guts. So I said, okay, wait. So I asked her, are you familiar with Doctor Strange? Blah, blah, blah. She's like, yeah, I've seen him. I said, okay, let's talk about the multiverse for a minute. Of course, she's like, what are you doing, Kirsten? I was like, so if you follow the multiverse, the way it works is that there's multiple timelines running simultaneously. You just happen to be aware of this one. right now of the woman who is struggling with this, with her business, having this problem. Her goal is to get to 12,000 a month, blah, blah, blah. And I went back through all the stuff she had told me that she wanted. I said, so if you were to step off that timeline into the timeline of the version of you who has all of those things, she's got the 12K a month. She's got the flow of all the clients. She's got all the ideal things. She's got all the other things she said she wanted. I said, now step into her. Can you step into her? Like, she's like, so I saw her, she closed her eyes. I'm like, okay, take a deep breath and step into that version, that timeline. And she's like, and I could see her seeing it. Like you could see her in it. And I said, okay, what does she know that the version of you that's in the other side doesn't? Because she's already done it. She's done the things. She's got the 12,000. She's got the things. I said, what does she know? Because she's been through it, that she would tell to the version of you who doesn't have it yet. And she breathed. And then we sat there for like 10 or 15 seconds, which feels like an eternity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then she started to break. You could see her starting to crack. And then she goes, I would tell her to trust. And I said, trust? And she said, yes. And I said, trust what? She said, herself. And then she lost it. So now she's crying. I'm sitting there trying not to say anything and trying not to cry along with her. And I'm just breathing. And I'm like, Kirsten, don't say anything. Don't say anything. Don't say. And we sat there for a full minute. I watched the clock tick by. And I'm like, I couldn't say anything. I could. But my point is, you don't want to say anything when somebody's in that space. And a lot of times we do, because we want to get them out of the pain that they're in and the feeling that they're in. But my job was to hold the space for her, not talk her through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then she worked herself through it. And she said, oh my God, this is exactly what I need. She knows I need to be here. I now know I need to be here. I am 100% clear. I said, okay, what would you like to do now? And she said, let me find my credit card. And she, at the beginning of the call, told me she didn't have the money. She wasn't ready to pay for another program because the program she had done before hadn't worked. And she was just here because she wanted to clarify a few things because she hadn't seen the pitch. She didn't know how much the thing was, and she wanted to know for the future.
Mm-hmm.
Now let me find a credit card. And she's like, I don't even know if this is going to go through, but we're going to make this work. And she was so sure at that point. Her whole entire energy changed. Her whole entire voice changed. Everything came back around. I said, okay, so before we process this, I just want to make sure we're clear. She's like, okay. At this point, she still hadn't asked how much it was. So we got to the price and she said, okay. I said, the painful price was like 20,000 and I said, we can break it down if you need to. And she said, well, I'd want to. And she said, how can I do that? I said, how many months would you like to pay for it? She's like, let's break it down into 6. I said, okay. So I showed her what the breakdown of 6 would be. We got it processed. We put it through. The credit card went through. It all worked. And she's like, all right. And it was like, she was so calm at that point. And she was in control. And I allowed her to be in control, but I was still setting the boundary around how that worked. I was still setting how the payments were going to work. I was still saying, but she was pulling me through the rest of the conversation. But when we
awesome.
Sit with them and be with them, so the Doctor Strange clothes. So like a lot of the people that I work with, they talk about the Doctor Strange clothes. It's fun.
I might have to use that now.
It's so fun because we are multiple versions of ourselves at all times. Because if we can see it, we can step into it, we can pull ourselves there. But we are the only ones who can truly talk ourselves into the next move because we're the ones truly driving it. It's not your job as a salesperson. It's your job to help them see it, not do it for them.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. I love that. I love that so much. And, I use different stories very popular stories in my coaching, right? Like I talk about like the Harry Potter Horcruxes, right? A lot. Like I'm sitting here thinking about these things, and I love that you've done that multiverse thing, and that there's all these different versions of yourself, right? But when we can step into that version and the person that has actually done it, right? It defies your limiting belief. But it also really, really pinpoints the limiting belief. And so that's a wonderful point for anyone trying to get into the sales call and being confident with that sales call, right?
Because if they can't see it, and I've had this especially with people when they're really spun out in a health crisis, when I was in that space and I was in that sales process, a lot of times I would get into a space where I'm like, what's the future version of you who has the health, who has this, who's back on her feet, who's got this, like all the things they told me from the beginning that they wanted. What's she telling you? And she's like, and I can see them, they're not there. And I said, like, what's happening right now? They're like, I don't believe she exists. I'm like, okay, that's not a thing I can fix on this call. Like, that is not I said, well, if you don't believe it's even possible to get the things you want, why are we here? Like, why are we on this call? Because I can't convince you she exists. I've seen it with other clients. I've seen it with other people. But if you don't believe she's a possibility,
why are we here?
Yeah. And sometimes they're like, I don't know, just because I feel like I don't want to give up. And I'm like, okay. So what would not giving up look like? So we can go down that path. But some of the times I'm like, look, I can't do that for you. I can't put you on my back and take you over the edge. If you don't believe it's possible, it's not.
Exactly.
And they're like, what? I'm like, I'm not telling you it's not possible. I'm saying if you don't believe it's possible, you're not going to get there. It's like trying to go on a trip and getting in the car and not knowing where you're going and then being mad when you don't get there. Like, right?
Yeah.
So we need a destination. And if you don't believe a destination exists, then
why are we here?
Why are we driving? Yeah.
Yeah. Why are we here? We're just going on a road trip. Like, you will waste your money if that's and
you will end up in all the places you didn't want to go.
I love that. Okay. So tell us about these 3 secrets to closing more sales.
Well, we've actually covered a lot of them, which is great. So the number one, I mean, like the best question I think to ask is, what do you think you need the most help with? And I phrase it the way that I do on purpose. What do you think you need the most help with? Because we know they need something more than what they think they need, but they can only see it from here. And underneath it is our solution. But a lot of times they don't understand our solution and they didn't even know what they were looking for. So this tells you a couple of things. Their answer to what do you think you need the most help with tells us what attracted them through our marketing that got them here in the first place. So then we can start making connections on who we're attracting and what signaled them to come through this funnel. So that's the first thing. And then there's a follow-up question to that is, how long have you felt that way? Gives us more information. But all you're doing here, you're not trying to convince, you're just taking notes.
You're just getting information. Yep.
Yeah. Second thing is, what's the most important thing to you and then this is where you fill in the blank, and I'll give you some examples. Like, what's the most important thing to you in your sales process, or building a relationship, or getting your health back on track, or finding your soulmate, or earning more money, whatever your promise is, whatever the bridge to the other side is. What's the other side? What's the most important thing to you in that X? And then you just put that in there. You ask that question. And then the third is, what specifically would you need to happen in the next 90 days or 30 days or 12 weeks, whatever your timeline is, for you to feel like you were on track?
Oh, I love that question.
Because you specificity, and you ask the word specifically with the word specific in it. What specifically would you need to happen in the next 90 days? I had a woman one time who had been wheelchair bound for 30 years come into one of my health programs and tell me that in the first 4 weeks, if she was not walking again, she would feel like the process was failing her. And I was like, that is not a thing that I have seen happen. I don't believe this is the right program. I did not feel confident that this would be the right thing for her. I thought she had an unreasonable expectation. I didn't want to take it away from her that was a possibility, but I felt that was something that we wouldn't be able to help her find the answer to. So it gives you information. So there are the 3 questions with that little follow-up questions that I think are the most helpful, that if you don't have them already in your like woven little bullet points of things you want to achieve before the end of the sales call, that I would add them in there. But then we also already talked about the number one way to start a call. It's, look, my job right now, we have 45 minutes for this conversation right now. My job is to help you find clarity around whether this is the right time for you and the right program for you, or whether it's not. And that's my job. Is that okay? And they're like, yeah, do you want to find the clarity? Yep. So starting the call and setting the boundaries, setting the framework of what we're doing, how much time we have, and what our goal is today. And it's not to solve all your problems. Don't bring all your labs to me and have me go through them with you. Don't bring me all of your sales problems and tell me you want solutions on this call. That's not the job of this call. So then the third thing is really looking at your process and how tactical are you being? How trickery are you using? What are you doing? Like, are you using fast action discounts to make people buy today? Are you doing all of these types of trickery kind of things that are very bro-y to get people over the line? Or are you using authentic ways to find out, is this the right process for you?
I love that.
Because fast action discounts, making them close on the call today, all of that stuff, I can tell you all the reasons why and show you all the reasons why it's not going to help you, because they're not making the decision because it's the right program for them right now. You're making a decision based on some pressure that's happening that you're a lot of times making up.
Yep.
Like, how many people do you know have a rolling program who try to force them to close on the end of the call that day because they know they won't be back? And I'm like, if they're making a decision knowing you have a rolling program that they could get in whatever they want, you are arbitrarily now changing the price on them because they didn't make the decision in the next 20 minutes. Something feels inauthentic to them about that. And they feel it, they know it. Even if they say yes, something's going to go wrong in your process with them.
Yep. I agree.
3 things.
I love those. I love that. And here's the thing. Like, if we're going to really, really hone in on one thing, I would say get good at asking questions.
Yes.
Get good at asking clarifying questions, because that is 90% of your sales process right there. Right?
Yep.
And those 3 questions that Kirsten gave are excellent questions to get your sales process going. And those are questions that also let you know that A, if you need more clarity on your program, and B, if that is your ideal client.
Yep.
I love it.
Yeah.
Kirsten, thank you so much for being here with us again.
You are welcome.
One more.
Yeah.
Yes, I know you've got something coming up. So one more question for you.
Yeah.
How do people get in touch with you again?
Oh, perfect. I mean, they can either just go right to the website, which is evolveminded.com, but I have a special free download if they want them. Obviously, they have to exchange their email address to get it. So there's the energy exchange, right? But it's the 7 biggest sales mistakes costing you high ticket clients and how to fix them. They can go to evolveminded.com/7 mistakes, or they can just go to evolveminded.com. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a little button that you can click and it'll take you right to the page that you can get it instantly.
I love it. All right. I am so excited you guys are here. We'll definitely have Kirsten back because I think she's one of our best podcast guests for sure.
Thank you.
Well, truly. And until next week, guys, we'll see you soon. Bye.
All right, Boundary Boss Babes. I'm super excited that you tuned in with me today. Make sure you tune in again next week as we chat about more Boundary Boss Babe topics. We're going to get into so many other things about how to set boundaries with your business, how to set boundaries with your relationships, so you can truly have the time, the money, and the flexibility that you are seeking. So tune in next week. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Let your other Boss Babe friends know about it. And also, if you've got any questions, make sure you submit them into the podcast by clicking on the send us a text message at the bottom of the podcast description. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. See you later, Boss Babes.